Cool. Well, here we are back with Cutting Through the Noise, and we're here with Jill Alban, founder and CEO of Ahead by 11. Jill, welcome to Pintler Group HQ. We're so excited to have you today.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, and we just went over to Drum Coffee, and I forgot my mask because I've been sort of like celebrating this freeness that the CDC announced.
Yep.
So you got a coffee, and I said, I'm good, so I've got my tea, but we're ready to rock here.
Yeah.
Ahead by 11.
Ahead by 11.
Tell us about let's start with what is Ahead by 11, and then maybe what is the name? Where did the name come from?
Yeah, thanks. So Ahead by 11 is my new company. I just started it about 5 months ago. This is my first solo venture, and it's a marketing consulting company. Right now it's a company of one, myself. And as I'm working with my starter clients and setting up some campaigns, I do love to create relationships with other organizations just like Pintler to help execute on many campaigns. So that's how you and I met over a project, and excited to get to know you and your team. And
super cool.
Yeah.
And you have a really impressive background in marketing and strategic marketing. And it sounds like that's what Ahead by 11 is focused on, is the strategic marketing planning, building brand awareness, and also technical marketing. These are things I'm guessing you've developed working as an employee with some great companies, and then decided, hey, that there's this opportunity that exists in the market. Can you explain sort of how that evolved?
Yeah, of course. I think it's also a bit of a more personal story in terms of my vision and what I wanted to create for myself for a long time. So I'll speak to that a little bit too. Hopefully it resonates for folks. And before I do, I'll just tell you what Ahead by, like, the origin of the name, because people have been asking me, and it's like, oh, this is kind of an intriguing name. Like, what does this mean? So I struggled to come up with a name for, this venture. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, do I call it like Jill Alban Marketing? No, boring, right? And especially with what I'm up to and what I want to help other people build, it felt really important for me to plant that right seed at the origin of the name. So anyway, my birthday is on 11/11. And also, this is a little groovy, but in numerology, my life path number is 11. So I'm like, okay, so 11 is it's just in my orbit. Let's play with this. And then, there's that Shakespearean saying, I think it comes from Shakespeare, where it's by the 11th hour, which essentially implies that you're running behind. So I played with that and was like, okay, so why not Ahead by 11?
Ahead by 11.
Yeah. And I liked the play on it feels a little competitive. I love to run and bike and, do all sorts of things in Montana's mountains. So I liked that element of it. So I went with that.
Yeah.
And to your question, I have been, in particular, I guess, it's been the past 10 to 14 years, really focused as an employee on leading teams to execute on marketing initiatives for whatever company I might have been employed for at the time. And so I cut my teeth professionally here locally at the Clark Fork Coalition, directing their outreach and marketing. And, back then, well, number one, when you work for a nonprofit, you wear a lot of hats regardless, right? So you learn how to be scrappy. You learn a lot of different skills. And that we myself and a couple of my other colleagues, we created the website, built the website. Right. We
in WordPress.
Built this in WordPress.
And then you're
we built the social media.
And
then we're fundraising. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'll never forget. I'll never forget the summer that I was building the website. I'm not a web developer.
Right.
I deleted half the pages somehow.
Oh
and
my God.
I was like, oh my God. But I found them and saved, I'll never forget that afternoon sitting there. It was summer, it was hot, I was sweating in my room. Anyway.
Yep. And there's this panic that just sets in. Those pages are just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
All that work.
But a big part of that work, of course, was building relationships locally, which I really enjoy. And I also began to really learn a lot and to elevate myself to think a little bit more strategically. And then I think it was in 2013, I moved over to the Namchak Foundation, which is a local foundation in the wellness space. And I had never worked in wellness before. Now looking back, it kind of it's like, oh, that's really when this like wellness, self-help, even these personality brands around coaching, et cetera, like all of that was really starting to take off, I think, about like eight to 10 years ago. And that was a big role I stepped into. It was a really cool professional opportunity. The foundation was just getting started, and I was hired essentially to oversee a book launch and program development and a brand and website build. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate to be able to work with some very cool, not only colleagues but also contractors, and that accelerated my ability to think strategically and really like, what is the why here? Who are we trying to reach? Mm-hmm. What's the data telling us? And also not at the same time, right, hold the original vision of, in this case, the founder, and keep it all moving and right, and all those pieces and everybody happy. So that was a big effort, and again, I learned a lot. And then I was there for a few years. And then about 6 years ago, I moved over to a company called Pintler Group, which is also in the wellness space. It's executive and life coaching. It's actually the largest coaching firm in the world. Oh, wow. It's still a small company. It's about 65 employees, 10 million annual revenue. So a small company. Okay. And I was brought over as their marketing director, and then also entered their coach training program. So I do dabble in executive coaching. I have a small handful of clients still. Cool. But my full-time work was as marketing director. And over the years, I moved up a little bit in the org, and at the end was just supervising a small team of 6. So I think I'm at the point now in my career where I consider myself skilled in leadership, skilled in, again, strategy, visioning. Mm-hmm. I don't like to get mired down in the details. That's the work I like to give to probably people like yourself and others on your team, who are very skilled in content production, who are very skilled in, Google Analytics, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. Who can build my UTM source codes for me. Like, sure. I don't want to do that anymore. But I love... I love bringing projects to life and people to life and brands to life and personalities to life. And I know how to do it, and I know how to find the people to make the thing work.
Very cool.
That's what I do.
That's a great kind of founding story. Like, okay, it all led to this, and the wellness piece seems to have impacted.
Yes.
Definitely the name Ahead by 11. This is your orbit. So
thank you.
Come full circle.
Thank you.
You mentioned sort of growing people and bringing people to life. Mm-hmm. I just want to backtrack to the Pintler Group just for a minute.
Absolutely.
You mentioned you started in marketing, but then you also started coaching. Mm-hmm. How did that work? How did that look? You were in this role, and then did they say, Jill, you seem like you might make a great coach?
It was actually flipped.
It was flipped.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was at Namchak Foundation, I traveled a lot, and I went to New York a few times a year. And long story short, a friend introduced me to Pintler Group and was like, you should just kind of have a coffee and get to know them. Like, she's a dear friend, so she knows my psyche. And I did, and then I opted to participate in what Pintler Group calls their Design Your Life Weekend, which is essentially a life coaching weekend. And it's a deep dive into you, and in particular, the ways that we hold ourselves back. And I walked out of that weekend like, okay, I need to do this work on myself. It was interesting. I've been talking about this to a couple of people recently. Like, it was less that I wanted to be a coach, which I do. I love coaching. I can talk more about that. It's a very fascinating thing to be doing with another human being. But I wanted to do the work. Like, I wanted to understand more about my traits, my inner dialogue, my mindset, and understand how probably unconsciously in some areas of life, not all, right? But in some areas of life, I may have been like self-sabotaging. Like, okay, so I'm not quite having the results that I want to see. Like, instead of blaming everybody else or nitpicking or staying rooted in kind of just unconscious storylines, like, let's actually hack into that and get a little more active in terms of mindset. So long story short, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this coach training program because I want to kind of clean myself up, understand myself a little bit better. So I enrolled in the coach training program, which was expensive. So I went to their I went to I forget what her title was at the time, but like
Yeah.
the president of life coaching division. I was like, hey, I have this marketing background. Why don't I barter for my coaching training? Would you
very
be up
nice.
for that? So I kind of side hustled, right? So I did that for like 4 months, and they made me an offer for a full-time role in the marketing
Nice.
department. So I went over into marketing. I'm not going to lie to you. It was difficult to take on a new job, full-time marketing and be doing this coach training work.
Yeah.
Because it involves like over the course, it's a 2-year training program.
Whoa.
Second year, you're doing practice coaching.
Yeah.
It's Pintler Group. I have nothing but good things to say about. Like, they take it seriously and really ask their coaches to do the same. Like, if we're gonna coach others on how to find more happiness in their lives, what are you doing to actively pursue whatever happiness and fulfillment mean to you?
Okay. Yeah. So there's a high bar.
Yeah. There's certainly a high bar. So, it was a sprint for a couple of years there, and then graduated, had a handful of clients, but stayed in that marketing role, and then 2020, right? So COVID hits.
Right.
I've always had a dream of going out on my own. I don't know. I'm a little bit of I have a very strong independent streak.
Yeah. There's some entrepreneurial streaking about it and independence.
Yeah. And I work hard, and I was like, I just was like, I'm working my ass off.
Yeah.
Why don't I work for myself?
Yeah.
So I set some personal goals financially, and just kind of looked at the year ahead and was like, okay, I'm going to set a goal at the end of 2020, which, wasn't exactly like, it was COVID. So I was like, we'll see how this goes, to quit and to move into my role now. So
so this was So this was the end of 2020.
Yeah.
You stopped working.
Stopped working.
Got it.
Yeah.
And went full-time, self-employed.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how has the last few months been treating you? Has it been a mix
pretty
of
awesome.
terror, roller coaster? How'd you describe it for someone that's thinking about, do I stay at my full-time job? Do I consider leaving?
Yeah. I mean, you and I were talking about this before, like, and you're like, are you more of a risk taker, or, and I'm like, I guess I am, but at the same time, I guess how I would propose to somebody to think about it is like, if you have a dream, understand that you can't just snap your fingers and your dream's going to happen the next day. But if you stay tuned to it and focused on it and just organize your time and your effort around that dream, you will get there. Might take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, but you'll get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just about, for me, it was just like reminding myself, I had hard days. I had a lot going on. Like it was a corporate environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody necessarily understood the Montana lifestyle, right? Where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go float to Smith. I'm unavailable. And they're like, you're unavailable completely? Like,
Yeah.
yes.
For a week?
Yeah.
Right.
So I just had to remind myself a lot, like, okay, like this is in service to who you want to be and what you want to create in your life. You can do it. Mm-hmm. Another big piece of that for me was navigating how to honestly communicate to all parties involved about my vision, right? And like, I didn't want to leave them in the lurch. So I strove to communicate like, hey, I'm taking on this role, but this isn't going to be forever. I am still planning on leaving at the end of 2020, and
and they were very open to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, like, kudos to that organization. Like, really encourages employees to just tell the truth about what you want to be doing.
And it sounds like you were transparent. Like, that's so key. It's just letting them know, hey, I'm not going to leave you hanging. Like, everything that I had been managing is buttoned up, and I'm.
Yeah. I mean, it was like halfway buttoned up. I did my best.
You did your best. If they're listening, Jill tried. She really did. That's funny.
Yeah.
So one thing that we're curious about here, because we are very much in the tactical weeds of marketing.
Yes.
But we do from time to time get approached for, okay, let's talk about rebranding. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about brand awareness. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about, this might be a pretty heavy question.
Yeah.
But like, when somebody approaches you and says, I have this business, I have this vision for a business. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't have a business yet, and they want your help in creating the brand.
Yeah.
What does that mean for somebody that has a business idea, but
right?
It's in their head and they can't get it down on paper? is brand building the process of getting it down on paper, or how would you describe that?
What a great question. I mean, yeah, I think that's exactly where it starts, truthfully. And brand building is always happening. Even if your brand's been around for 50 odd years, right? You're always working at accurately telling your story and conveying your company values to the people you're trying to reach, whoever they are, right? So yes, I think the first question, if somebody in that hypothetical, the first question I would ask is, okay, what's your why, right? Like Simon Sinek, like that. I'm a huge advocate of the why.
We'll have to link that up, Travis, in the description.
Yeah. So okay, so you have this vision. Why are you trying to make a difference in some sector? Are you trying to impact people? Are you trying to solve for a specific problem? Are you trying to disrupt a sector? Like, are you trying to make a bunch of money? Like,
Right.
what's the
What's
why?
the reason behind this that you're about to devote the next 5-10 years of your life to building this thing?
Yeah, exactly. And so understanding that, right? And then understanding, because a lot of times too, individuals, groups, entrepreneurs, like, will have an idea for something, but not quite understand how to bring it to life. Like and I don't know who says this, so I don't know if you'll be able to link it in your show notes, but like, there's the saying that like an idea is only worth as much as you're able to execute on it, right? So it's like, I'll give you $10 for my idea, but I'll give you $100,000 if you take my idea and run with it, right? So it's so understanding that, like, have they specifically thought through, is this a product? Is this a service? Is this a community build? Like, what is this exactly? And of course it relates back up to their why, et cetera. Yeah. And truthfully, Kyle, at that point, like it really starts to depend on the situation and who the person is, and how much money is involved, and where the money's coming from,
what their idea is, perhaps.
Yeah, right. But like starting to understand and hopefully communicate back up smartly and diplomatically and all of these things. Like, here are the buckets of how to start to consider this. Like, number one is financial. Like, what it might cost to have the impact you're looking to have, right? Number two is operational capacity. Like, what that might look like initially. And then number three, and this is probably maybe even something to consider before the other two, is who are you trying to reach? Is it actually a paying customer? Is it more of just an audience persona in terms of like impact and influence that you're looking to have? And who is that person? Can we start to paint pictures of these persona or personas, understand them, right?
Yeah.
And then I think too, some values work, and understand, and this could come a little bit later, but like understanding with the founder, maybe any other key people involved at the early stage, what values we want to uphold, right? And then what I like to do with a client is, after some of those initial conversations and understanding a little bit more of the lay of the land, is creating what I call, and I think I've shared this with you for this current project, is just a brand identity framework, which is only language at this point, but just captures vision, mission, values, target audience. I start to play there with hero language, their unique value proposition. So you know what I mean by that. But essentially it's like, once you understand this, essentially the impact or product or service, let's understand the competitive landscape a little bit. We don't need to dive into full-on market research at that stage, but like, how are you different? And let's make sure, especially, that this individual knows a little bit of the lay of the land of what they're might be getting into.
Totally. Yeah. I really like that. It's sort of the foundation. It seems like you're describing this foundation to then build everything else on top of.
Yes.
Brand promise comes up a lot with existing companies. Okay. What's your brand promise? That's different. Is that similar? Is that, how does that relate?
I would definitely see that as similar. I don't use the phrase brand promise, although maybe I should. Like that, that's a good suggestion. And I think a question on top of that would be, how do you keep it, and how well are you doing at keeping it, right? And to also be willing as a brand to take yourself out of your own shoes and and either like do the work through your focus groups or your surveys or whatever to really understand, like, okay, this is how we think we're getting our brand promise across, but
what's the
how
external?
are you receiving it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm sure those are pretty telling if you bring in a focus group and people are the the team is watching from behind the glass.
Yeah.
That's how I imagine it to look at least. And
or metaphorically even, like, or
and they're
whatever.
Sort of screaming, that's wrong. That's not what our company does, but that is the reality.
And truthfully, there can be some really interesting learnings in that and opportunities, right? Because it's so easy to, again, like, have your blinders on when you're sitting in your own seat from your own perspective, and to, like, really see how other people, you're keeping your promise of XYZ to me. And you're like, XYZ isn't even really in our promise. How interesting that you feel that, right? So, like, keeping an ear out for those opportunities too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hugely important, and it's often sort of worried about later at a company. Like, when should if somebody comes to you with an idea, is that step one in your mind? Is that something that comes along only after you have paying customers? Where should somebody listening that has a business idea consider, okay, I need to spend some time thinking about just what you described?
Yeah. I mean, I do what I do for a reason. Like, I think it needs to happen at the outset,
Stage
at
one.
the beginning.
Yeah, step one.
It can happen alongside other processes for sure. Like, if you are flying with an idea for a new app and you've got to get an MVP together, like, get that developer working on something. Like, start iterating whatever your product is.
Maybe get some users to tell you what's wrong with the tech itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can collect, like, beta data while you're also doing this deeper thinking and deeper work, and then start to integrate. In fact, that can actually be very productive, because you can, again, take yourself out of your own seat and be like, okay, so I'm thinking this way, and starting to, again, put this framework together. But meanwhile, people are using my product over here like this, and how interesting is that? And, like, allowing the two to interplay, I think, can be really cool.
That's cool. I know you've got a meeting coming up here, Jill. We appreciate your time. Was there anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping we would touch on? I know there's probably a lot of stuff, but in this quick episode on branding and Ahead by 11, any questions that I didn't ask? Like, oh, Kyle, you should ask me this.
I would love to learn, if you're willing to give me the, 5 to 8 minute overview, just like for Pintler and you guys, like, what are your, I'm saying guys because Travis is right there behind the camera.
We do have some women on the team as well. Yeah.
Like, what's your vision? Like, where do you want to take this? Because I'm just kudos to you and what you've built and your team. I'm a huge proponent of content marketing, and I love how you've taken that on as a function of your company and are walking the walk with your content production and your own storytelling. So I'm curious, like, how that facet of your business integrates with your overall vision and where you're looking to take Pintler over the years.
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't know that the host has become the guest on the podcast.
I'm sorry.
That reminds me of something I was reading recently, that if you would ask, Elon Musk or if you would ask to anybody, hey, describe the future of the electric car, you might have taken the Prius and said, well, it's like the Prius, but 3 years later or 3 years into the future. And maybe it's a little faster, maybe it's a little less boxy.
Sure.
But then you have these people like Elon Musk, love him or hate him. He has this vision for the electric car that is, the Tesla Model S seats 7. It can go from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. It's like sexier than an Aston Martin. It's like the sleekest car. And nobody would have described the electric vehicle that way. And he did. And so when you ask me, like, what's your vision 3 years in the future? It's easy to sort of say, well, I hope we're a growing agency. We're a larger firm. And that, of course, is true. That I hope we are working with really fun clients. I also see Pintler Group as just a team of experts and bringing those experts in-house. Travis is sitting behind the lens, but when we brought Travis on, all of a sudden our video, our digital IQ just shot through the roof. Yeah. And we use those skills that we have under this Pintler Group umbrella to help other businesses grow. Wouldn't it be neat if, as time goes by, we continue to have different ideas? Like GeoFly is a software that was built in-house under this umbrella. We take it to market, we produce content, we sell it. So everything we do on the marketing side for GeoFly like fails and we lost money, or it succeeds and we get a great return on ad spend. Yeah. So that's real. And so I'd like to do more things like that with the team that we've assembled.
Almost like a lab.
Kind of like a lab.
Yeah.
Kind of like a lab. Like a like an incubator. Yeah. You can have an idea, nurture it, be like, all right, is this something that we want to move forward with, and go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I think that's part of the vision. And then I recently, got done reading Vivid Vision. Have you read this
No,
book? It's a
no.
pretty good book. We'll link to it up, Travis. But it talks all about, instead of maybe like a vision board with pictures that people can really interpret very different ways, you like kind of outline what you want your world to look like in 3 years. It's not a forecast, but it's like in 3 years, this is what we're doing. And then you sort of decide, well, how do we now get there?
Yeah.
Travis is familiar with this.
Yeah.
He's read it and said, this is pretty ambitious, Kyle, but he's on board, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
We flipped spots. Nice work.
Yeah. I love that.
Cool. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah, we
Kyle.
really appreciate it. We'll link up when the website is live. Definitely let us know. So
Okay.
add it,
Thank
add
you
it
very
here.
much.
I know that sometimes it's like what's the saying? The cobbler's shoes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've said this to somebody else recently. Yeah, I'm definitely in that spot. The shoemaker's kids go shoeless.
Yeah, something
right?
like that. Yeah, for sure.
I don't have a website right now, guys. Sorry.
It's TV to come.
You can find me on LinkedIn.
That's it.
At Jill Alban.
LinkedIn. We will link up to the LinkedIn. Jill, have a great day.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.